So yeah, it's been a turbulent year. It's
Mm-hmm.
how would I call it? Like it's been a tsunami of a year for the fintech ecosystem in
Mm.
India. The year started very strong, right? Like come Jan 2022,
Mm.
ये unicorn बन रहा है, वो unicorn बन रहा है. There were unicorns with zero revenue on the table, but having a valuation of $1 billion, and those very unicorns were also sponsoring the IPLs of the world and all these cricket tournaments just to grab eyeballs, which I think,
Before
and if
we before we go ahead,
yes,
I would like to stop you. And for my people who might not know what is a unicorn, can you please elaborate in a sentence? What is a unicorn?
well, good question. So in layman's language,
Yes.
any company, any enterprise which has a valuation of over $1 billion. For the Indian audience out there, any company which has a valuation of almost 8,000 crore rupees Indian currency,
Hmm.
right, is essentially categorized as a unicorn. Now, that is the one line textbook definition of what a unicorn is. Now, people have come out with terms like decacorn. Decacorn is essentially, 10 billion US dollars, right? मतलब 80.
Datacorn and unicorn, which is now
Yes.
Datacorn I've never heard before. Wow.
डेकाकॉन, अरे भैया, now तो people are saying अरे यूनिकॉर्न तो छोटा है भाई, we are aiming for decacons.
He talks a lot, you know.
Bhushan Sawant,
Yes sir,
welcome to He Talks a Lot, you know.
I know, and
You know?
thank you. And thank you for the invitation, and for having me as part of your guest wait list. I will, I might want to call it.
Oh yeah, it was a wait list. There were so many people dying to come on the podcast. It's not even funny. From Joe Rogan to Rogan Ghosh. Everyone.
नहीं सही है यार, this is good,
Bhushan
good.
Sawant, how are you, buddy? Happy New Year.
Thank you, thank you. Wishing you and your family a brilliant and fantastic 2023 as well. I've been good. I just came back early morning today from Wayanad. Uh,
Yeah, I saw
and I,
those beautiful vineyard pictures and exotic, huh?
yeah, I mean, while the vacation in itself was quite good, the journey not so, not so much, because old school way mein we traveled, we essentially, did the bus journey, or rather decided to take the
Ah,
bus journey, uh,
beautiful.
which is where I also realized that my decision to invest in an electric vehicle was perhaps not well rounded and well thought of. So see,
Wow.
so had this been like
And I
a
am giving examples to people about how my friend has evolved. And he's taken a wise decision in life to go with an electrical vehicle. And they're asking me who. Of course, I didn't name them. Now, if they do watch this podcast, they'll know who it is.
yeah,
And
yeah.
now
So
here I am listening to you questioning your decision.
tomorrow onwards, the grind starts, like you rightly mentioned.
Hmm.
Kid goes back to school, wife goes back to her set of freelancing, and I go back to the fintech world and take a deep dive. So
That deep dive is going to happen tomorrow, right?
that deep dive is going to happen tomorrow.
Wow.
I'm sure I'm not very sure whether you've been following the Indian landscape and the Indian fintech ecosystem, but it's been it's been a
That's why
year.
you are here.
Yeah,
Because people
it's
like me, and there are a lot of people like me out there who kind of have do have a sense of, okay, we know what's going on, but we don't know what's going on. So we are in that,
absolutely.
oh, I need to read, but no time. So let me read some headlines. In general, we get a sense, oh, fintech, man, what's happening? People are losing job. People are this, that. Big companies, Facebook, Googles of the world are like letting people go. That's all we know. That's all I know. Of course, I'm sure there are reasons which are part of it, and you being in the industry know a lot more of it. But yeah, that's where people like me stand.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call what you read in the newspapers absolutely false. And yes, before we sort of proceed and continue, just a
Mm-hmm.
disclaimer: any opinions or views made on this
Of
podcast are
course.
purely
Thank you
personal
so much,
and
sir.
unprofessional. So, so
So, if people who are listening, you can take it seriously, or if you don't want to take it seriously, up to you. Choice is yours. We all have choices in life. This is 2023. Bhushan Sawant in the house. Enjoy. Bhushan Sawant, go for it.
so yeah, it's been a turbulent year. It's
Mm-hmm.
how would I call it? Like it's been a tsunami of a year for the fintech ecosystem in India.
Mm,
The year started very strong, right? Like come Jan 2022,
mm,
ये unicorn बन रहा है, वो unicorn बन रहा है. There were unicorns with zero revenue on the table, but having a valuation of $1 billion, and those very unicorns were also sponsoring the IPLs of the world and all these cricket tournaments just to grab eyeballs, which I think,
Before
and if
we before we go ahead,
yes,
I would like to stop you. And for my people who might not know what is a unicorn, can you please elaborate in a sentence? What is a unicorn?
well, good question. So in layman's language,
Yes.
any company, any enterprise which has a valuation of over $1 billion. For the Indian audience out there, any company which has a valuation of almost 8,000 crore rupees, Indian currency,
Hmm.
right, is essentially categorized as a unicorn. Now, that is the one line textbook definition of what a unicorn is. Now, people have come out with terms like decacorn. Decacorn is essentially, 10 billion US dollars, right? मतलब 80.
Decacorn and unicorn, which is now
Yes.
Decacorn I've never heard before. Wow.
डेकाकॉन, अरे भैया, नाउ तो पीपल आर सेइंग अरे यूनिकॉर्न तो छोटा है भाई, वी आर एमिंग फॉर डेकाकॉन्स.
Nice.
उसके बाद अभी क्या आएगा मालूम नहीं, बट फिलहाल तो यहाँ है हमारी गाड़ी.
Decacorn, what did you say? I'm just going to take my
So
notes.
decacorn is essentially any enterprise or a company
Ah.
which has a valuation of 10 billion US dollars.
Oh, 10 billion and above.
10 billion and above, correct. And in Indian
Unicorn.
currency,
Okay. In Indian currency?
And in Indian currency, a decacorn is a company which has a valuation of 80,000 crore uh,
Rupees.
rupees. Yeah,
80,000 crores.
yeah. So I'll also sort of, on a lighter vein, right,
Mhm.
just help you understand, where we are in the current scheme of things.
Okay.
So as a
Where we are in
unique,
terms of the fintech you're talking about, or India in general in context of fintech?
in general,
Fintech
fintech
world.
as well as India, globally,
Okay,
right?
okay, okay.
See, unicorn for most of us, I'm pretty sure, Mandar, you have a daughter, I
Hmm,
have a 7-year-old son,
hmm,
both of them are growing.
hmm.
Unicorn is something that they typically read, in those poems or,
Yeah, yeah.
in their books, right? Which fundamentally means that a unicorn is a mythical creature
Right,
which has never been seen.
right.
Textbook definition of unicorn, if you go
Yes.
today
Yeah,
on to the dictionary or Google unicorn, you will see a
correct,
mythical creature which never exists.
correct.
वो वैल्यूएशन भी वैसा ही है. So
Okay.
the valuations that these companies are getting,
Hmm.
see, just to give you a apples to apples comparison, the likes of the Tatas of the world, the likes of the Reliances of the world, the Adanis of the world, the Infosys and the Wipros of the world,
Hmm.
they are all unicorns today purely on the back of the money that they have made, on the back of being profitable, on the back of being sustainable, and on the back of being scalable, right? Their
Correct.
solutions are real world solutions solving real world problems.
Absolutely. Huh.
The challenge with unicorns, and specifically the unicorns in the Indian fintech ecosystem, is yes, they are solving real world problems. So the problem part of it is getting taken care of. That there is no doubt about it. The consumer life has become absolutely seamless because of some of the products that these unicorns have brought to the table. So nobody is questioning that.
Hmm.
The more important question is at what cost, right? So while you might have $1 billion revenue, or sorry, $1 billion valuation
Hmm.
to categorize your company or your enterprise as a unicorn,
Hmm.
money on the table is basically none. So there is no scalable revenue line. Most of these are unprofitable enterprises or startups, as we call them, right?
Hmm.
Investors have essentially bet their money saying that at some point in time in the future, at some critical juncture, वो इसको inflection point बोलते हैं. The category or the term used for it is there will be an inflection point, let's say 5 years from now, when this company will become net positive. और उसके चक्कर में you have all these investors of the world, the VCs of the world, the Ps of the world. VCs is venture capitalists, Ps is private equity funds, and then of course you have your Goldman Sachs of the world and all these big banking behemoths
Correct.
putting money into these companies. So I mean, long story short, to me, unicorn is a mythical creature. One should not go or rather play the valuation game. One should, if you ask me, if I was an entrepreneur, for example, while yes, it is good. See, and again, a little known secret for everyone's benefit. When entrepreneurs look at valuation, right, they're essentially looking at maximizing their own equity.
Correct.
So what happens is when let's say I have built a company which is now valued at $2 billion US, and of course, because I'm the CEO and I was the one who initiated the whole concept and the idea, and then took that concept to the market and said that इस concept पे पैसा लगाओ और मैं इसको scale करके दिखाता हूँ. ठीक है? So
one question before we move.
Yes.
When you talk about valuation, right? How do you basically come up to that number, whichever company? And this is just purely basics, back to basics. I'm going purposely so that people who are listening or who are watching, if they're not aware, I just want to make sure, since we will be talking about this, I'm assuming quite a lot.
Correct.
Just quickly, if you can summarize.
So, yeah.
How is this valuation?
So valuation typically is not a simple, unfortunately, it's not as simple as the definition of the unicorn that I gave earlier.
Correct.
This valuation tends to be a little tricky. There are a lot of stakeholders involved. But in plain context, there is something called as a term sheet, which typically gets signed between the investors and between the founders. Right? Okay. So that thing is called as a term sheet. And again, just to keep it as simple and as basic as possible, let's say that XYZ investor comes, looks at ABC company, says that I think this is a great concept. I think this concept will really do well. And, the new term that they're using in India, building for Bharat. That has now become the catchword in India. Building for Bharat. Nobody says building.
So let's assume we take this example of this product which hypothetically we've just created, which is this sunglasses. These sunglasses you can, of course, protect from the sun in the daytime. In the nighttime, it helps you with the driving. You already have that. Plus, also, what it does is in the night, it detects people who might come and who've got these mentality. They are thieves or they are these goons. These sunglasses, if you wear in the night, as you're walking in the crowd, you can sense who is going to be the next chore. I'm just this is the product, hypothetical product, right?
Yeah,
this is meant for Bharat.
Yeah. Okay. So the very product that you spoke about, one, it is an absolutely hilarious product. I think it will do very well in India, given the fact that we have hooligans all over the place.
Exactly.
I think again,
so you know where you're going to be careful while walking, which area.
Correct. Now let's not again go there. That's a very sensitive topic.
We're just saying.
Yeah. But I hear you. So if I have to just essentially take this very example that you gave, I think for starters, so I'll look at it from an investor standpoint. Okay, because let's in this particular example, let's say you are the CEO. Yes. I mean, you are the founder who has come out with this concept. Yeah. And I'm the investor. So and founder says that, hey, this is the product, this is what it does.
Correct.
As an investor, I'll say that, I'll of course do my own research. I'll say, yeah, north of India mein to zyada hooligans hai. So I think north mein ye zyada karega kaam. And so on and so forth. So I'll do my own categorization. That's how investors typically go about it.
Yeah.
Then what they do is, there is something called as total addressable market. So TAM बोलते हैं उसको, TAM, total addressable market. और उस total addressable market में what is going to be your customer base.
So it's like example, the overall India market, what is going to be my customer base?
Yeah. So
Okay.
when you say TAM, total addressable market, that fundamentally means, in a country, typically you will, typically sunglasses are worn by, everybody,
Correct.
right from kids all the way to people who are old age, right?
Hmm.
So in this particular example, let's say that the entire population of India is my addressable market, right?
Okay.
Or if not the entire population of India, let's say I will stick to metros, tier 1, tier 2, and say that look, 40% of 1.3 billion people is my total addressable market, right? In that total addressable market, now what I do is, total addressable market mein what is the so ye dekho matlab, these terms might sound very how do
Simple,
I
simple.
say?
We'll go chill, bro. Don't worry.
So you have total addressable market,
Yes, which we
then
got like example entire of India. In that, how many percentage of people
so we
will be
will say
using the product?
40% of the Indian population is my TAM, total addressable market.
Right.
Then we say that, hey, look, now we need to really understand where am I going to get the money from, because every person that you go and try to sell the
Product.
These beautiful the beautiful sunglasses to is not going to buy it, right?
Hmm.
So then you say that in this total addressable market, what is my serviceable available market? So it's called SAM. Okay.
Sam.
Yeah. So it's called serviceable available market. So in the total, so let me give you a very example, very small example of society. Okay. I think that will actually help the audience and the viewers also understand, what is it that we're talking about. So let's say that in my society there are 100 people. So the TAM is essentially 100. Correct?
Yeah.
Now in that TAM, there might be born babies who are obviously not going to,
wear the
sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
There might be perhaps very aged people who don't typically step outside the house.
Don't
So
require.
again, correct. So they
Correct.
then there might be maids, live-in maids, who again stay, their house helps, right? So typically, so ये सब मैं फिर निकाल देता हूँ. So what I do is I start subtracting all these people from my total addressable market, and I then come to a figure called as serviceable available market.
Got it. So which will be like your.
So which, for example, in this example, 100, then that figure perhaps might come down to, let's say, 70.
Yeah.
Okay. So my total addressable market was 70. My serviceable available market is, my total addressable market was 100. My serviceable available market was 70. Now, in this serviceable available market, how many of those people will actually buy my product?
Got it.
Now, that is called SOM, serviceable obtainable market.
Serviceable obtainable market.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. And then you say that, hey, of these 70, you will do categorization, right? Some people, you will maybe do categorization on the basis of income, because see, every product has a cost point attached to it, right? So again, a very classic example is, would you go and buy a Versace glass, sunglass? Because, maybe 2 out of 10 people might go for it because they have that kind of money to afford a Versace sunglass, right? So then you have to do, your product's price comparison.
Maybe other ones could buy Varshanchi.
Varshanchi. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, I agree, and that's typically how it flows, right? So you have products like Abibas in the market, and and I have seen Nikki, Abibas, and I've seen people wear t-shirts and shoes. My t-shirts was one part of it, but when I saw Abibas written on a shoe, I was like, boss, somebody out there is killing the serviceable obtainable market.
Exactly.
ठीक है, कोई ना कोई गेम कर रहा है वहाँ उस सेक्टर में.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Continue.
So yeah, I mean, so then I essentially do my categorization, my segmentation of customers. I of course will have a price point to my product. So now I do that math that, hey, maybe somebody having an income of less than ₹1,00,000 per month perhaps might not be in a position to buy my sunglass, or maybe he might not be a low hanging fruit, because that person might deliberate a lot. Let's assume for a moment that your sunglass that we're talking about in this particular case costs 25,000 rupees.
Correct.
Right now, somebody who's having a income of 1 lakh rupee or less will obviously not end up buying a 25,000 glass, right? But somebody like you, let's say, who's got an income of maybe 5 lakh or 6 lakhs or more, will perhaps go for a product like this, right? So from that 70, now I narrow down to perhaps 50% of 70, which is 35.
I like in this how you assumed I have got 5 lakhs and more. That is my takeout. Go for it. Go on.
So now you, of those 70 people, your serviceable obtainable market, which was SOM, has come down to 35. So you've seen what has happened here, right?
Yeah.
So the waterfall, this is essentially called a waterfall. So
effect.
The TAM, SAM, and SOM is essentially a waterfall effect, where, and again, this can be flawed. This is not a this is not a textbook definition of how you essentially do a market sizing, right? But this is a best practice. It's, while I say that it's not it can be flawed.
This is the ideal way to go for it. There can be here and there, and
absolutely,
like upar niche to thoda, it's okay.
Now coming to the valuation piece that you were talking about, the valuation hota kaisa hai? So ye jo maine bataya, this is the
on basis of this.
This is the structural basis of how valuations are built. So any company will say ki dekh, this is my product, this is my TAM, this is the TAM that I'm looking at. Of that TAM, this is the SAM, and of that SAM, this is the SOM, the serviceable obtainable market.
Right.
The beauty is, investors will always try to say that the product that I'm building is has been engineered in such a way, or has been designed or made in such a way that at some point in time, this product might become, again, I'm using that fancy word, ubiquitous, and it might essentially, the entire TAM might end up buying it. So a beautiful example of this, the most beautiful example of this globally that I can think of, is the United Payments Interface, right?
United Payments, UPI, yeah.
United Payments Interface. When it started off, people said कि अरे यार ये तो नहीं चलेगा, ये तो वो savvy जो मोबाइल है जिसके पास वही यूज करेगा. How will a poor vegetable vendor use UPI? उसको क्या मालूम? उसके पास स्मार्टफोन नहीं है, उसके पास फीचर फोन नहीं है. But look at how beautiful. And by the way, NPCI, as we, in fact, let me just pull this out for you. This is interesting. So NPCI's current valuation, right, is pegged at $3 billion US. NPCI, the National Payments Corporation of India, which is fundamentally responsible for all the predominantly UPI.
That's the MyBap of all these.
Yeah, predominantly UPI, but if you look, NPCI has done a lot of other things as well. So it's got e-rupee now. It's working on something called as.
Interesting. I was reading a bit about it, but we'll get into it.
Yeah. So it's, again, coming to the point. So just imagine, now here is what so if you ask me, is this valuation fair? I would say it's unfair, because to me, honestly, the product that NPCI has built, the valuation perhaps might be 10x of this. It should not be 3 billion, it should be 30 billion, if you ask me, right? But I'll tell you, kyun nahi ho 30 billion. वो इसलिए नहीं है, because again, the product that NPCI has built is, they again have categorized it as a product for the greater good or common good of people. So it's a product where no party is making money. You understand what I'm saying, right? Today, when you use a credit card, online or on a terminal, right? Let's say Mandar steps down, wants to go and buy some noodles, right? And Malaysian currency is ringgit. So let's say 5 ringgit. The noodles cost 5 ringgit. You hand over your card to the vendor swipes 5 ringgits, gives it back to you. How much do you think the vendor is actually getting? Because you have made 5 ringgits payment to the vendor.
Correct.
Right? But how much do you think the vendor is actually getting in his kitty? So he just take a wild guess. Yeah.
How much is the vendor getting out of the 5 ringgit I paid, right?
Yeah, you paid 5 ringgit. So for Mandar, the deal is done. मैंने 5 भरा, मेरे को noodle का plate दे, जो भी है, and I'll take it back to my place or eat it in the food court.
This is the payment is done by
The payment is done by you, right? It's
No, no,
your
no.
credit card
In through a card.
through a card on a
Okay.
POS terminal, on a
Okay.
terminal.
Okay. So vendor might get 250.
Well, yeah, I mean, so थोड़ा ज़्यादा ही कम बोल दिया.
Maybe
It,
three.
नहीं, नहीं.
350.
So I'll help you understand, right?
Okay.
So what happens is that in 5 ringgits, let's say there will be something called as a merchant discount rate, right?
Okay.
So the vendor does not get 5. The vendor essentially gets maybe 4.9 in his account. So that 10 ka difference is essentially the difference
With the
that
card.
is, yeah, that is split between the issuing bank, the acquiring bank, and the network. Network here being your Visa, Mastercard. In, for example, NPCI network is called RuPay, right?
Right. So this will
Now,
be between, say, example, if my bank is HSBC,
correct.
then Visa is the mediator.
Network, correct,
Network.
correct.
And then the vendor's bank,
Perfect.
which is
That,
whichever the bank is, correct?
perfect.
So it's
Perfect.
divided between three of these parties.
Absolutely. So
Got it.
what's happening here is the way the money has flown, or rather the way the money has been distributed or split across these channels, is that there is monetization for all parties involved. The
Right.
HSBC that Mandar has, maybe a City or a Standard Chartered that the vendor has, and of course the network which is facilitating this entire transaction, right?
Got it.
यूपीआई में ऐसा नहीं है. यूपीआई में
Okay.
कोई पैसा नहीं बनाता है.
Right.
ठीक है. So UPI, the government says, is for the greater good. इसमें कोई पैसा बनाना भी नहीं चाहिए. गवर्नमेंट का स्टैंड ये है कि यार UPI is for the greater good. We want India to be, of course, digitized economy. And when I say digitized, see, India was essentially, or is rather still. In fact, fun fact, I went to Kerala. Everybody there, every single shop that we ate at, every single vendor that we purchased from, they don't believe in the concept of cards. तो cards तो लेते ही नहीं वो लोग.
Correct.
Because see, in this very example, the merchant or the vendor who sold you noodles, he lost out on 0.10 na ringgit.
Yeah.
He had to share it from his wallet.
Yeah.
So this very example that I was giving you about my Kerala visit was, everywhere I went, the moment I fish out my card, they're like, sorry boss, we don't accept cards. तो payment कैसे करेगा? Then the poster buy of Indian, digitized economy came up. वो UPI का मेरे को scanner दिखाया.
So from you can pay Paytm or whichever.
You use, yeah.
Whichever
They are very
you
clear. They are very clear, sir. You scan the UPI.
Yeah.
You make payment to us in UPI, no problem. Or old school way, you give me cash and I give you whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? Very clear on that. Of course, this is, my observation, because we were staying not in the main town. We were staying like, in the outskirts, in the wilderness. Some of the photos you've seen. So, those perhaps are people who don't perhaps have access to a POS terminal as well.
Yeah.
So it's an assumption that I'm making here. I'm not generalizing. Like I said, Kerala is a beautiful state. But having said that, in this very example, UPI, if you look at the entire methodology, is a brilliant technology. Like I said, NPCI currently is valued at $3 billion as we speak. Now just imagine the game. If NPCI was, and now the beauty is UPI has become ubiquitous, and UPI has now become a habit. Forget ubiquity.
Correct.
It has now become a habit.
Exactly.
In this entire Kerala trip, I did not have more than 500 rupees in cash, in currency in my wallet. At no point in time did I have more than 500 rupees in cash in my wallet. Right from the cab payment to the, rickshaw or auto payment, to my hotel payment, to, whatever entertainment, food, beverages, whatever that we spent on, everything was through UPI.
Nice.
Literally everything was through UPI. Maybe here and there, certain places, you have to deal
that's still okay.
Yeah, you have to deal in cash. That's fine. But so that's the beauty. And now imagine tomorrow if NPCI says, now to make light of this entire analogy that I'm giving. एक बार क्या है ना, शराबी को तुम दारू, मतलब if you give a drunkard free alcohol for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, he'll come, he'll enjoy. Arey, yaar, I'm having the fun of my life, free booze. क्या
Mm-hmm.
मजा आ रहा है, क्या मस्ती है. And then fourth week onwards, you say कि यार sorry boss, वो free booze का जो system था ना, वो first 3 weeks के लिए था. अभी वो fourth week onwards, no, you will have to pay 10 rupees. No.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't help it. I mean, I also have
Yeah,
to run a business
of
यार.
course.
मेरा भी घर चलाना है मेरे को.
Mm-hmm.
अब वो शराबी will not create a fuss over it because now he has become so hooked on to that
Correct.
that liquor that he feels कि यार ठीक है रे, they gave me free for 3 weeks. No, that's fine. यार, fourth week चलो, I'll pay 10.
Mm.
Now that 10 you make 20, you will still pay for it.
Correct.
So it's essentially about forming a habit.
Yes.
Okay, it's essentially about forming a habit, and once you're hooked on, it's like a drug, right?
Yeah,
Once
it is a drug.
it's once you're hooked onto it, then you slowly and steadily start charging for it very, very subtly.
Correct.
And which is, if you ask me, of course, there are more qualified and better folks in NPCI and in the Reserve Bank of India sitting across the table, who of course might have thought about this. But my sense, if you ask me, and my personal opinion is, if NPCI were to essentially monetize UPI, and they can do it in a very subtle manner, one is it will have a greater acceptance because today banks are wary of providing UPI on the B2B side, primarily because banks know कि इसमें पैसा ही नहीं बनाने का है. मतलब there is no money to be made in this, right?
So banks in context, we're talking about the traditional banks.
Yeah, the ICICIs of the world, the
Correct,
HDFCs
correct.
of the world, all of these banks. So on the direct to consumer side, banks के पास option नहीं है because the government has said that this you have to implement. But I'm
Because this
talking.
is kind of like screwing with them, right? Like the entire this UPI we are talking about.
Yeah.
Correct? Like I was just thinking, right? Like I don't even. Yeah, I recently went once. Maybe it's in the last 3 months. I'm just thinking of myself, right? I've been maybe to an ATM once, like literally once. That too, I don't know why I went, but yeah, I went for. Is the behavior has changed, right? How many times you go to a bank now? Like last time we used to go like
No,
typically.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is what the okay. So let me actually give you a even more broader perspective of
Hmm.
what fintech in India stands for. So fintech is
I
financial
also
tech.
want to know actually, just to sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Like, okay, one we know we're talking fintech. I also want to know how is fintech affecting these traditional banks, right?
Okay, well,
And
so that's a very good question.
yeah,
As
yeah.
actually coming to that, so it's
Mm,
actually it's a complementary service that these two players are actually. It's a partnership, right?
mm, mm,
And how will I call it a partnership? So look, traditionally banks, let's say a ICICI of the world or a HDFC of the world, or
mm.
some of these big PSU
Yeah, yeah,
private sector banks, State Bank of
yeah.
India and all.
Mm,
While they have the wherewithal to sort of put in place branches, physical branches, understand that there are a lot of pin codes in India, right?
yeah.
To have a branch at each and every pin code is a very it's a capex expenditure for these banks. It's a
Correct.
capital intensive expenditure for the banks, which is exactly where the financial technology services players, or the fintech players as we call them, come into the picture. So what
Mm,
these guys are doing is they are saying, see, imagine your experience of going to a SBI.
mm.
SBI mein jao, you will be shown from one table to another table.
Correct.
Before you come out, 2 hours will be gone. And
Exactly. Mm.
the thing that typically should have taken not more than 5 minutes has now
Taken 2 hours.
essentially taken 2 hours for you.
Yeah.
Which is what fintechs are solving in India. They
Mm.
are saying that, look, boss, customer experience is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a customer to go away just because the bank is not able to service him properly.
Mm.
And ये typical challenges कहाँ आ रहा था? So, I mean, where were these typically challenges being observed? These were observed when it came to onboarding a customer. Let's say Mandar walks into a State Bank of India branch. He says that, sir, I want to open a savings account, and some security guard with a 1940s rifle will say
Correct.
that
It's still
you
standing
have
there.
to go to that section of the bank, and bring a form. Just imagine, we are in 2000s and they still talk like that, by the way. You go,
Yeah.
you go to SBI, you say savings account खोलने का है, they will again know that 1940 rifle. Well, it's actually a picture which is not even a picture now. It's actually a
Correct.
reality. right?
Correct.
This essentially was leading to a very bad customer experience. You go to any website, check out reviews for SBI. SBI पे तो कितना
Yes,
memes भी बन रहे हैं. So many memes have come.
exactly.
One meme says that Zomato guy came to deliver lunch to somebody in SBI, and that very guy said that अभी तुम lunch के बाद आना.
Correct.
So the point here being that
Right.
this is fundamentally what the fintechs are solving for. Fintechs are saying that, hey, look, I can assure of amazing customer onboarding. I can assure of amazing user experience, right? And I will front end, for SBI, a fintech will say that boss SBI, ये मेरे पे छोड़ दो. मैं आपका सेविंग्स अकाउंट करंट अकाउंट खोल के देता हूँ. आप मत करो कुछ, क्योंकि आपके साथ लोगों ने एक्सपीरियंस कर
Correct.
लिया है. वो पुलिस वाला अभी भी उनको दूसरा सेक्शन ही दिखा रहा है. तो you leave it to me. I will ensure. See, because now understand what's happening. The undercurrent is very actually interesting, right? India is supposed or will in fact supersede China as the largest uh, mobile market by 2030. We are already at number 2, by the way. China is at number 1, we are at number 2. We have superseded US. US was at number 2 in I think 2019, 2020, but post COVID. And interestingly, again, look at how some of these pandemics have actually really so you know the only electronic product which was sold the most in the pandemic in metros. Very fun fact, and this is a fun fact.
In metros.
In metros, it was a dishwasher,
Nice.
which was sold the most during the pandemic. I am one of those consumers, by the way. So I can
Which
say that
helped you, of course, which
so I
helped
can
you
say that with
maintain your relationship.
absolutely. So with a fair amount of confidence, I can say that these things, some of these pandemics, and not that I'm evangelizing or saying that the pandemic was a good thing, but
Correct.
it was unfortunate. People, of course, lost their lives, but some of these become inflection points in the in the growth journey of a country.
Got it.
And now the smartphone mobile market in India is the second in the world.
Correct.
Touted to be at number 1 by 2030.
30,
Sorry, by 2030, right? So so now coming to what we are talking about.
Before you move to that, right, I wanted to share one story. Now
Yes,
that we were talking about SBI and the security guard holding the gun.
Oh.
So I remember, and this has got nothing to do with fintech, but yeah, this has got to do with SBI and how the guy holding the gun also is not sure how he's holding. So there was this friend of mine, I remember, and I don't know if I told you this story. Friend of mine, he had gone to SBI. He was waiting there in the queue. Earlier you have to wait, right? So he was waiting in the queue, and as usual, these guys, the guards also give those forms, right? They also pass on the form, and they help you with, like, if you're an aged person or what, they'll guide you and tell you which counter to go and all that things, right?
Correct.
So this friend of mine, he had nothing else to do and wait. So he decided to go and chat with this guy and say, "Hey, bhai sahab, how are you?" and all that, or kaisa mast hai and all that. And he didn't even realize, that guard, that while talking to him, वो उसका वो बंदूक है ना, वो थोड़ा थोड़ा साइड में खिंचका लिया रे वो ऐसा. And then while talking to him, right, वो ऐसे कर रहा है, ऐसे सब ऐसा, this is like, and the guy didn't even realize that he was playing with his gun, broad daylight, and
अच्छा, the guard didn't realize कि ये हो रहा है. हाँ,
ये हो रहा है, उसके सामने हो रहा है, dude. उसके सामने हो रहा है, but he's engrossed in the conversation, whatever they're talking, I don't know. And then after that, he gave it to the guard. अरे हाँ uncle, आपका gun. तो वो ना इतना भड़क गया ना बाद में, क्योंकि उसको एक तो उसको रियलाइज नहीं हुआ, राइट? ही डिडंट नो. उसके बाद ना वो गन से मारने आ रहा है उसको, मतलब गन लिटरली, इमेजिन यू आर यूजिंग गन एज अ झाड़ू. हाँ. तो देन ही सेंड हिम टू द लास्ट गाय इन द क्यू.
अभी तुमको अलग सेक्शन में जाना पड़ेगा.
But it was just like, when I heard it was just like, I mean, these are stories in India, यार, कुछ भी हो सकता है.
It is crazy, man, and it's not even funny, right? So but that's the beauty. That's the beauty, if you ask me, of what a fintech in India is doing.
Yeah.
Today, if you see again the undercurrent piece that I was talking about, India, in fact, let me pull that figure out for you. So just give me 1 minute.
No problem.
Uh, yeah. See, if you look at, wait, let me pull this out properly for you.
हम्म कुछ नहीं, अपन रिलैक्स है, पॉज भी कर सकते हैं, चिल भी मार सकते हैं. हाँ.
So like smartphones typically as on date, as per the latest report, Gartner report,
Mm-hmm.
says that smartphones will account for 38% of all network devices by 2022. So
Okay.
that means 829 million people out of 1 point, I mean, we are 1.4 billion people, right? So 829 million people today have access to a mobile
Smartphone.
device and
Yeah.
smartphone,
Smartphone.
not just a mobile device, smartphone.
Smartphones.
What the beauty is, even people with feature phones, people who don't have a smartphone, who have basic phones, feature phones, the NPCI has been working on products which essentially don't require a smartphone. So today you can do UPI
Nice.
transfers using something
Without
called
a
as,
smartphone.
yeah, which is something called as UPI at 123, right?
It is already out there.
Yeah, it's already been launched.
Oh.
They launched it specifically for tier 2 and beyond. So for
That is
example,
brilliant, yeah.
for example, let's say you go to some, random village in,
Yeah.
Ranchi,
Hmm.
or go to some,
Tier 3
off
town, yeah, off the town, yeah.
off the map
Yeah.
village in Shillong, right? Udhar bhi hai. Udhar you can use UPI 123.
So what is it? What is it called? UPI 123.
It's called UPI 123. It essentially does not require the user. So it's called UPI 123 Pay. It does not require a user to have a smartphone. You can essentially use a UPI 123 like an on-device wallet to make transfers. Yeah. So it's okay. So coming back to what fintechs were doing, right?
Yeah.
So if you ask me the poster boy of fintech in India, in my mind it is NPCI, hands down. Because here is a business. अगर NPCI को कोई पूछता कि टैम क्या है, सैम क्या है, सॉम क्या है, तो NPCI तो किल कर दिया रहता अब तक. Which is why I said कि I think they are undervalued. 3 billion मुझे कम लग रहा है. It should ideally be 30 billion. The only reason why it's not 30 billion is because there is no revenue angle to it, which is now, this is called a callback. You asked me about how valuation is, right? I think we sort of overstretched it a bit, but so this is exactly how valuations are built. So investor typically will ask, what is the SOM that you're going to go after? The founders or the company management will say, hey, this is the SOM that we will do. मतलब मोटा मोटा इतना revenue. For example, in a year's time, I will get 100 rupees onto the table.
Got it.
Investors will say 100 rupees लाएगा ना तू, चल ठीक है. I will put 500 rupees into your company, ठीक है. But after a 5-year timeline, I want an exit at. They will put a figure to it, a value to it. That
the investor will put a value to it.
Value to it. There will be an exit value, saying that if I exit, say 5 years from now, after I've put my investment into your company, that exit value should be at there is some calculation. Yeah, there is some calculation which goes behind it. That, my friend, is essentially how you derive at a valuation of a company. Right. So I think. I mean, again, this was in very plain language. It's not as simple as how I've explained it. I might perhaps have gone wrong at a couple of places as well.
ये अपना तूने ये कर दिया रे अभी फिनटेक का अवतार बना दिया 3 घंटे का ना but it is beautiful experience.
फिनटेक का अवतार बना दिया बोल रहा है यार.
No, but okay, but I mean, it is. I think it required that the time to explain people, because a lot of people, I'm telling you, and I really believe this. Like I was talking to my wife, who is in fintech, and the way she also sometimes explains me, I'm like, dude, you guys are working in the industry, so for you all to use certain jargons like that, whatever, tam danda bed, what is tam sam
Tam Sam Som.
tam sam som. I mean, पूरा गाना हो सकता है इस पे.
I like that.
So it is very difficult for someone like me who's outside. Yeah, I know the basics of it, but I'm sure there are people like me and many more who have no idea about this Tam Sam Som Sum Sam Sum. But, but hey, moving on, I wanted to ask you something else.
ऐसे
Fintech
जल्दी
है-
बोला मतलब if you say it fast, no, somebody will feel as if you're speaking some South Asian language.
there are these certain things, but I don't. No,
Like
we'll not
that.
we'll not get there. Then he'll go into that racist category.
हाँ,
Ah,
correct, correct.
but
Again,
I
snowflake
want to tell.
generation. I will
Correct,
step back.
exactly. So I want to know. So now that you spoke about this, so many things when it comes to India and how it is evolving and the valuation and all that, right? UPI we spoke about. Uh, Now moving on to 2023, what do you think are the trends, man? Like, what is going to happen in this whole fintech world, which you feel,
So,
man, this is what's going to happen in 2023. Moving
so
on.
I'll tell you, right?
Uh,
2023 is going to be a very tough year.
okay.
On a very serious note, right?
Hmm.
And with all due respect to folks who are weathering the storm,
Hmm.
uh, clearly the focus has shifted to profitability now. So now I think somewhere the investors have become wary of all the gimmicks and the jazz. So I will not name the fintechs,
Hmm.
but there were a couple of fintechs here in India, which garnered a valuation of over $1 billion in under 3 years.
Wow.
8,000 crore का valuation 3 साल में बनाया. And here you have a Tata, which is a 50 plus year old company, in fact, 100 plus year old company, which is valued in billions. But on the back of what? On the back
Yeah.
of sheer tenacity
Correct.
and products and being out there in the
Yeah.
market and
Yeah.
hearing the market and all that, right?
Yeah.
So just imagine, yeah, I mean, you cannot, वो बोलते हैं ना, there are no shortcut to success. जो grandfather बोलते थे अपने,
Hmm.
माझ्या
Hmm.
आजोबा
Hmm.
मला म्हणायचे. There are
Hmm.
no shortcuts to success. तो
Hmm.
वो shortcut to success वाला गेम खत्म हो गया अभी. वो वैल्यूएशन वाला गेम खत्म हो गया. Now investors are very clear. मेरे को धंधा दिखाओ. Show me a model, a business model which is scalable and which is profitable, mind you. Not just scalable, because all these guys were doing scale.
Skill. Correct.
स्केल तो वो कर रहा था, बट पैसा नहीं था उसमें. So for let's say acquiring, there's something called as CAG, cost of customer acquisition, right?
What is
So
it?
CAG, CAG, cost of customer acquisition, right?
Hmm.
So now that, for example, if I have to acquire Mandar as a customer,
Hmm.
I'm essentially, for me to onboard Mandar as a customer, my CAG is, for example, 500 rupees,
Hmm.
right? Now extrapolate that to hundreds of Mandars and Bhushans and whoever else is out there, right?
Hmm.
Millions actually, not even
Hmm.
100.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, in very plain context.
Hmm.
क्या हो रहा था? Some of these fintechs,
Hmm.
imagine a SBI, ICICI, HDFC of the world, old school banks, strong
Hmm.
institutions, being in the market for over 30 plus years, मर झगड़ के they had some credit card penetration in the market. We had these two new players who came and who said that we will disrupt the entire credit ecosystem in the country.
Hmm.
So what they did was they issued cards in under 3 years, almost at par with what a ICICI, SBI, and a HDFC had done in under 20 years.
Hmm.
Right? Not now, of course, in sheer numbers, not, but in sheer velocity, yes. Like, for example, if SBI has taken 10 years to issue, let's say 100 cards, example,
Hmm.
these guys took like a week to issue 5 cards,
Wow.
right? Or 10 cards. Like the sheer velocity of, execution was breathtaking. And, with all due respect, hats off to these fintechs, right? They've done some phenomenal job. In fact, if you ask me, the whole concept of BNPL, buy now, pay later,
Correct. It is so
right?
big, man. Here it is huge. I'm
Yeah.
sure in India it is huge.
So now there is a different concept, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just finish the BNPL piece first, and about
No,
these two startups.
you get to the trend part. So trend, we said you started with saying that the profit is what is going
I'm
to
coming
be.
to that. I'm coming to that. This is a
Okay.
build up to the trend piece.
Oh, another
So,
avatar
another avatar, correct.
with this time with 3D.
Avatar 4. So,
Avatar 4.
So,
Hmm.
so very clearly, what happened is, you know, so there was a cheat code that these guys essentially leveraged.
Okay.
A
They
cheat
found a
code.
loophole in basically the
They
system.
found a
Correct.
loophole in the in the regulations,
Correct.
in the regulations laid down by the
Indian
central.
regulation board when it
हाँ,
in the fintech world.
रेगुलेशंस ऑफ द आरबीआई, रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया.
Reserve Bank of
ठीक
India.
है.
Yeah. Yeah.
अब वो एक कौन में होशियार रहता है हमेशा क्लास में.
Of
देयर इज
course.
ऑलवेज वन इंटेलिजेंट चैप इन द क्लास हु
Yeah.
वो ऐसा गेम खेलते वक्त भी उसको चीट कोड मिलता है, फिर वो हर एक को हराता है.
Hmm.
ये मेरे पास तो चीट कोड है, तेरे पास नहीं है, चल मैं तेरे को
Hmm.
हराएगा. लाइक आई हैव द
Hmm.
चीट कोड, यू डोंट, सो आई
Hmm.
ऐसा ही होशियार बच्चा स्कूल में भी रहता है. उसको
Hmm.
वो होशियार मतलब किसी मतलब नॉट इन टर्म्स ऑफ actual brilliance, but in terms of
Street smart.
understanding, क्या चीज मैं करूंगा तो मेरे को
Correct. He's that
90
street
on
smart kid, right? He's not a
street
ratta
smart.
marne wala.
Correct, he's not a ratta mar. So these
Correct.
two fintechs were street smart.
Got it.
They said कि चलो यार ये loophole है, nobody is paying attention to it, साला we will leverage this.
Hmm.
खट BNPL के नाम पे more than million customers acquired. ठीक है.
Wow.
Now RBI saw this, some of the big babus saw this, they said कि यार ये तो अपने रोजी रोटी पे लात मार के गया.
Hmm.
So then somebody came with their legal teams, made them sit and read the regulations,
Hmm.
and then the legal teams pointed out कि यार इनका तो business model ही flawed है. What they're
Hmm.
doing is fundamentally against. So to put it in plain context, a prepaid instrument and
Hmm.
lending on a prepaid instrument
Hmm.
is essentially an oxymoron, because it's a prepaid instrument. You cannot
Correct.
lend on a prepaid instrument,
Correct.
right?
Huh.
Which is exactly what these guys were doing, because there was no regulation
Regulation.
which said that a wallet cannot be loaded at the time of transaction. So what was happening is, if a Mandar is using one of these two fintechs card,
Uh-huh.
it is a zero balance card. It's not prepaid. It's got zero money on it. But when you're swiping that transaction, some NBFC with whom this fintech has tied up is essentially underwriting Mandar and saying कि चलो Mandar is a credit worthy customer, इसका जो फंड है वो मैं फ्रंट एंड कर रहा हूँ. So if Mandar is swiping 100 ringgit at a Malaysian store, some non-banking financial institution with which this particular startup has tied up says that okay, Mandar has just swiped for 100. I think Mandar is credit worthy. Chalo, I will fund Mandar's card for that particular transaction. So in technicality, what is happening is you are essentially taking a loan from that particular NBFC.
Got it.
Okay, that in plain context, that is actually what is happening. But none of this was getting reported to the RBI, which is absolutely against regulations.
Got it.
That is when the RBI said that, boss, none of this is happening. Now, coming back to your question, right? So if you ask me 2023 trends, right? I think the BNPL story, while it is strong, will see a lot of flux. And in fact, if you look at some of the biggest BNPL players globally, I'm not very sure if you've heard of Klarna. So Klarna is essentially a Scandinavian fintech.
Okay.
If I'm correct, it's based out of Denmark. Stockholm is the headquarters. They are the market leaders when it comes to BNPL, buy now pay later, right? But UK again, there is UK, there is Australia, right? And what's happening and of course US is there and India is there. But my point is that what's happening now is regulations. See, you need to understand that BNPL can be a very dangerous game, and it can actually spiral into the recession of the worst kind, which is exactly what happened in the US back in 2008, 2009, which is called as the subprime crisis. Subprime crisis is basically you're giving money to people who are not worthy, who are not credit worthy.
Correct.
You're giving money to new to credit customers, new to bank customers, without underwriting them, without doing due diligence, without having alternate data. And these guys, what is the surety of them paying back, right? Yeah, imagine somebody will, get a credit limit of, again, random example, credit limit of 500 US dollars or 1,000 US dollars. In Indian currencies, let's say somebody gets a credit limit of 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees, 4 lakh rupees, whatever it is. He or she uses it, right? And then disappears.
Correct.
क्या करेगा वो सब हो जाएगा NPA, non performing asset. So any BNPL by the definition of it is at a fundamental level, it's a EMI. It's a equated monthly installment that you
Correct.
pay, right?
Correct. Yeah.
At a
Yeah.
fundamental bare
Yep.
basic level.
Yep.
So it's in essence, it's a loan, or it's a, I would say, interest-free loan.
Hmm.
Now, if you stretch it beyond 3 months, the first 3 months are typically interest-free. But if you stretch it beyond 3 months, then there is an interest element which starts coming in.
Hmm.
I'll tell you why that happens. So, textbook definition of NPA says that any loan, if not repaid within 90 days,
Hmm.
principal and interest included, is essentially categorized as a non-performing asset.
Right.
Okay. अब क्या हो रहा है ना, from a trend perspective, again, I digress में, I tend to become avatar with each and every topic that you're throwing at me, but coming back to the trend, long story short, I think BNPL will essentially plateau,
Mm-hmm.
and there is something new which is coming now, because दुनिया को कुछ नया flavor चाहिए, तो कितना, till how
Correct.
much time will you keep eating chicken tikka masala?
Correct.
Life में you want flavors, no?
Exactly.
You
You
want
need a new
flavors.
avatar.
You need a new avatar. So
Correct.
now what's coming to the market is save now, buy later.
Sorry, what's that?
Save now, buy later.
Save now, buy later.
Buy later.
Okay.
What your grandfather, my grandfather, your
Which was-
father, my father have believed in.
Correct.
It's essentially save now, buy later.
Save
But-
now, buy later.
Save
It
now,
is
buy
called
later.
as SNBL.
SNBL, correct. BNPL का SNBL हो गया.
Correct.
अभी इसमें भी twist है. इसमें twist ये है कि
And
brand.
it is already out there?
It is already out there,
Okay,
boss.
okay.
It's been rolled out in India. It's been rolled out in, I believe, in Malaysia as well.
I'm sure yeah.
So just go to any Apple store, right? Very, very clear example. Sorry, actually, let me Apple बहुत typical example हो जाता है, because then I'm categorizing Apple as a very aspirational product. Well, of course it is, but okay, we'll take some different example. Let's say that you want to save up for a trip to go to Norway.
Okay.
मंदार से कि यार मेरे को इतना बचाना है अगर नॉर्वे के लिए जा रहा है, तो there are only two ways to do it. No, I mean either you will start saving every day, let's say 100 rupees है, तो 100 rupees में से I take out 25 rupees and keep stashing that 25 rupees till such time that my budget has become big enough for me to take my family to Norway. That's the old school way of doing it. That's how your father and my father did it, right? That's the traditional save now, buy later model.
Correct.
Now what's happening is some of these players, fintechs, are now tying up with merchants or service providers. So in this particular case, in I'll take the Indian example. A fintech might tie up with a Make My Trip or a Booking.com. Okay? And a Make My Trip and a Booking.com will give an offer to Bhushan. ठीक है, saying कि एक काम कर, if you pay so much to me on a recurring basis, I will give you cashbacks, I will give you kickbacks, I will give you cash discount because you're paying on time to me. So one way to do it is एक होता है EMI, equated monthly installment, but जिस पे interest लगता है, ये उल्टा हो गया. The merchant is paying to you because you're paying him money in advance. So for example, let's say this trip to Norway costs 1 lakh rupees.
Okay.
Or better example would be 1.2 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
That means 10,000 rupees every month. Correct? So what the merchant will say is, merchant is essentially क्या कर रहा है ना वो? They are taking your money and using that money, plowing it into the market to earn interest on it. And some part of that interest, they are paying it back to you. Because you paid me in time.
Got it.
Okay. So, and because I earned interest on the money that you gave me, I will give some part of that interest to you. So, for example, see, typically 6% is you go to any bank in the world, typically in India at least, you will get interest on your savings in the tune of 5 to 7%. Correct? I'm pretty sure that's the trend in Malaysia as well.
Correct.
ये लोग क्या बोल रहे हैं? ये लोग बोल रहे हैं कि ठीक है, of that 5 to 7%, whatever that I'm making, that's called interest arbitrage. So, of that 5 to 7% that I'm making, I will part away 2% with the customer. Customer भी खुश. Customer बोले यार चल यार पैसा देने के लिए मुझे पैसा मिल रहा है. So it's like essentially like a pseudo bank. The merchant is essentially doubling up as a pseudo bank, saying that तू मेरे साथ पैसा रख और मैं उसका इंटरेस्ट तेरे को दूंगा, तो उसमें दो चीज हो रहा है, योर ट्रिप इज ऑल्सो गेटिंग टेकन केयर ऑफ, and on top of it you're earning a cashback for taking the trip with that particular service provider, which can be a Make My Trip or a
Whoever,
Booking or whoever. So my friend, this to me is the trend that is essentially going to see a lot of traction in 2023. Save now, buy later, number one. If you ask me, another trend that I see doing tremendous traction globally, not just in India, globally I'm saying, is foreign currency remittance, and you are a classic example for it. You are a person who's earning in ringgits. There might be certain element of savings that you might do at the end of the month, and you might want to send that back to your loved ones back in India.
Correct.
Right? So you might want to send it to your father or your mother, or maybe some kitty that you have put. Here is kitty mein main jama karte jaunga. That's essentially called foreign inward remittance.
Correct.
By the way, you know this, right? India is number one in the world when it comes to foreign inward remittance, right? Ahead of China, Mexico, and Egypt. So, and Philippines, of course. So these are the top 5 in the world, by the way. India is at number 1. 87 billion ka foreign inward remittance tha 2021 mein, which is by far the largest in the world, right? So that's coming to the point. That's an area, and this is largely unstructured because banks, number one, it's not seamless. Wash through account banana padta hai between different banks of different countries, right? Like SBI ka ek wash through account Malaysian bank ka rahega India mein, Malaysian bank ka wash through account SBI ka rahega Malaysia mein, so on and so forth. So although I'll not get into the technicalities of it, but the point is ki it's a complicated, long drawn process, has a commission and cost structure attached to it, and it does not call for a good customer experience. I don't know, like, what is your experience? If you want, let me ask you that question now. If you want to send money to India, how many typical days do you spend, or what is the turnaround time that it takes for you to send money to India?
1 day.
1 day, right? Now imagine I can bring that down to in under a minute.
Wow, that'll be
how does that sound?
Awesome,
right? That's an awesome customer experience, right? That is what some of the fintechs are solving for as we speak.
So these are new kind of service providers or existing ones who are trying to figure out that solution?
So some of them are new,
right?
If you look at what a Wise is doing in the UK, what a Revolut is doing in the UK, right? Payoneer is doing. So some of these are new. Some of these are, of course, old age. Point here being that everybody is now very clear that even a day's time is a time too long.
Is it going to be both ways? If I have to send it to India and from, say, example,
absolutely.
Nice.
Idea is, can I make foreign inward remittances and foreign outward remittances as seamless as maybe
currently
doing
a UPI and all that?
So that's
in 2023 you're talking about.
Yes. So this is, so if you ask me, 3 big trends that I see from a fintech perspective. I'll come to the funding part later. But purely from a fintech perspective, I see a lot of traction on save now, buy later. I see a lot of traction on the the foreign currency exchange transfers globally, right? These two for sure. I see a lot of rationalization happening on the BNPL piece, which is why I said that it will plateau.
Got it.
It will plateau. Now ho gaya, the peak,
the peak was whatever was supposed to happen happened.
It's done. Now khatam. That show and dance is over. So
right.
The players here in India, again, without naming them, 3 months, for example, if I spend 30,000 rupees, I had the leverage of paying 10,000 rupees every month at zero cost of interest.
Right.
And then a lot of those spends became NPA, non-performing assets, because people didn't end up paying, right? So to that extent, see, the industry standard of a NPA is typically under 5%. अगर मेरा 100 रुपए का बुक है, लोन बुक है, तो 5 रुपया मैं बोलता हूँ या मैं प्रोविजन करता हूँ कि 5 रुपया मेरा घुसने ही वाला है. मतलब there will be somebody who will not pay there will be a pool of customers together who will not pay those 5 rupees. right? Out of 100. Now imagine out of that 100, if your NPA is 15 or 20 rupees, then you're looking at a very bad book. So that's called
Correct.
a bad book,
Got
which
it.
is what happened with these fintechs that I'm talking about. So their bad books became more than 15%, more than, to at one point it was around 17.5, 18%. Yeah, 18% out of 100 rupees is your bad book. But 18 rupees out of 100 is your bad book. That's
So
not a very good
was
way
it
of.
one of the reasons why all these layovers are now happening?
Yeah, so see, you need to understand, right? A lot also was, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say it was directly connected, but
One of the reasons,
one of the
maybe.
reasons, yes. So because kya ho gaya ki, there was over hiring which happened across functions. People were very bullish ki workload will be there, and we will need people to man when the workload comes our way. And suddenly with these regulations and all coming in, suddenly the business model has become unviable. And in fact, forget unviable, the business model was never viable. Sorry, I'll correct myself, the business model was never viable. The business model was thrown under the bus by the Reserve Bank of India, saying that ये business model ही गलत है तुम्हारा, तुम ये इस पे धंधा कर ही नहीं सकते. Now
Got it.
suddenly I have a team of 100 people. So I mean, I'm giving a very crude
Yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
Point here being that with all these business models being thrown under the bus,
Hmm.
the viability of the company now being questioned by the investors,
Hmm.
obviously there was pressure on the founders to sort of take a step back and say that, hey, do I really need 100 people?
Hmm.
Can I just do with the absolutely critical people in my organization and make the show happen, right?
Hmm.
Do I really need these bells and whistles?
Hmm.
And that is one of the reasons. And so again, coming back to how you started off, right? You started off with saying Facebook, and I mean Meta. Facebook is Meta now,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Google and Salesforce,
yeah,
Amazon,
yeah.
all these big, forget fintechs, I'm talking now, let's go global, right? So
Not, yeah, yeah, yeah.
so even these guys, I mean these enterprises, these institutions laid off 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people. Kyun hua wo? Have you ever wondered? So if you look at what happened, and if you have been following their stocks, the stocks were essentially plummeting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one way to give confidence to the market that my stocks are plummeting, but I will see to it that my stocks don't plummet, because see, again, at the end of the day, shareholder value is of utmost importance. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
person who has taken a Facebook stock and you see that shit, man, Facebook is not doing that well, you might essentially replow that money into some other company, right?
Correct.
Facebook does not want that. Facebook still wants you
Mm.
as a shareholder pumping your money into their company, right? Now the
Correct.
one way, and again, like I said, this is one of the reasons, not the only reason.
Yeah.
One way to jack up your share price, and it's actually again ironical, right? Because you're laying off people to ensure that your share price goes up.
Correct.
But unfortunately, that's how the case is, because what happens is the biggest expense for any company are essentially operational costs, and employee costs are the one of the bold operational costs that come in a balance sheet.
Got it.
So if I'm looking at a profit and loss balance sheet,
Hmm.
and now let's say as a CEO or as a chief finance officer of a company, मैं जाता हूँ और मैं बोलता हूँ कि यार देख इतना, this is our top line, this is the kind of money that we make right now,
Hmm.
but this is our top line, like this is our cash inflow, but our cash outflow is itna, like I
Hmm.
think we have too many employees, 20,000
Got it.
का
So you need to, so we
हाँ
need to
अपने
cut
को
down in
हाँ
order
अपने
to
को
save that money.
करेक्ट. सो मुझे अगर पीएनएल को इन्फ्लेट दिखाने का है,
Exactly.
इफ आई
So,
वांट टू एसेंशियली, सो देख, मतलब ऑन अ लाइटर नोट, दिस इज सम आसोल सीए चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट सिटिंग एट द बैक एंड सेइंग कि साला यार इतने लोगों का गरज नहीं है अपने को, एक काम
correct.
करते हैं, लेट्स डू अवे विद 5,000 or 10,000 people,
Hmm.
automatically our pnl will become positive, automatically the stocks will go up.
Hmm. Hmm.
So if anybody is to blame, again on a lighter vein, it's some chartered accountant sitting in some
Sitting
back
there.
office,
Yeah.
doing this ganit of the PNL, and then going to a Mark Zuckerberg and telling him ki yaar look boss, this is what we need to do, or going to a Jeff Bezos and saying ki yaar देख 10,000. तो Amazon ने क्या किया? Amazon's core product is what? Amazon's core product is the platform, right? The marketplace. अब वो Amazon दुनिया भर का बाकी चीज कर रहा है, Blue Origin, he is sending people to space,
Hmm.
उधर वो Alexa, show me
Correct.
this, Alexa, tell me the time. That's not their core.
Correct.
That's something that came afterwards.
Yes.
Their core was always the marketplace.
Yep.
So some CA sitting at the back end might have said, "Ki yaar, what the like what's happening here? Yaar? Why are we why are we putting in so much of money in Alexa? उसका तो रिटर्न है नहीं उतना."
Correct.
Alexa के लोगों को निकालो, चलो नहीं चाहिए मेरे को इतना बड़ा टीम. So what happened in Amazon is essentially the entire Alexa team was laid off.
Got it.
Right. Because they said that, look, boss, we don't need a 5,000 people team to man a Alexa line of business.
तुम लोग घर पे जाके अलेक्सा से बात करो.
तुम लोग घर पे जाके Alexa से बात करो. हम 50 लोगों से भी Alexa का पूरा LO भी चला सकते हैं.
Correct.
Which is exactly what happened. So see, this rationalization happens when, again, at the cost of, saying it, happens when companies look at saying that, hey, profitability is what we are after, and shareholder price and share price and shareholder value is what we are after. So see, it is unfortunate. Like I said, it's ironical that at the cost of laying people off, you have to essentially jack up your P&L and in turn your share. But yeah, that's how life is, unfortunately. So again, coming back to the if how we started this off, right? If you ask me, I think stepping into 2023, and we are literally on the second day of 2023. I think stepping into 2020, I've already told you, my views and opinions about what will work in 2023. But now, if I look at a global scale, gone are those days of, spray and pray. All these fintechs were doing that, spray and pray. कि यार पैसा फेंकूंगा मैं and I will acquire customers. I'll just throw money in the market. I will sponsor IPLs of the world. I will sponsor Grand Prix. I will sponsor Wimbledon. I will sponsor this. I will sponsor that. People just old school marketing कर रहा था ये लोग, which is actually not needed. Understand this. So now the most important part, I think, marketing tech. If you ask me, the biggest beneficiary of all this in 2023 is going to be marketing tech companies like CleverTap. Make marketing contextual.
Got it.
Okay, like for example, if Mandar is a person who likes to eat out, तेरे को मैं cinema tickets का ad दिखा के क्या फायदा है? Because you're a foodie, you're not into cinema, so it does not make sense for me.
But that is already happening, no?
Exactly, but it wasn't happening at scale, number one, and it wasn't happening it wasn't happening in an optimal way, right?
Because that is literally about playing with the media, right? How you want to do. Like, now that we've spoken about it, I was talking to someone here, one of our Desi boy only. He's in some other company, media company. So he suggested a client of mine that now what is going to happen is they've got this new thing. So when as you scroll your phone, right? You scroll your phone through your thumb, correct?
Yeah.
So now there is this tech which is basically going to make sure it's going to predict where your thumb is going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And accordingly kind of serve you whatever we want to serve you with the ads or whatever that is, so that you can basically go and check out whatever that product is or whatever the promo is,
Absolutely.
So that is already
it's called haptics. It's called haptics. There are tech companies out there which do exactly what you said. So as a user, they assuming let's say I have a phone and I'm using this, right? They actually track the way you use your phone. Which app do you use the most, right? In that app, how much time do you spend, right? All of that, and then can I now make which is where I'm saying that marketing tech companies are actually going to see, because what has happened is investors are very clear. Investors are saying to all these fintechs and to all these global tech companies, yeah, we don't want you to spray and pray. Matlab, we don't want you splurging our money, millions of dollars, to sponsor English Premier League. वो चला गया दिन, वो नहीं करना है मेरे को.
Correct.
तुम कायदे से करो धंधा. Use technology is at your behest. Use that. Make marketing more contextual. So that's, to me, is going to be trend number one. in 2023.
But that is fintech marketing you're talking about, right?
Fintech, absolutely, fintech marketing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So fintech marketing becoming absolutely contextual. The
yeah.
Cokes of the world will still do what they do. तो
I
उसमें
mean,
तुम
I I think most of the brands I've already gotten into it since I'm in
yeah,
that world.
correct,
So all the more I think fintech it makes any perfect sense,
correct,
to do that. Gone are the days wherein, but also I feel India being India, especially India I'm talking about, we are a very emotional breed.
yeah,
So you still need that storytelling. It just the format might change, the consumption of that might change. It might not, like what you said, it be a regular TV ad. Of course TV is still huge, one of the only countries
TV
in
is
the
still
globe
huge.
wherein TV is huge.
Yeah,
Rest here
yeah,
TV is dead, man. We don't do anything for TV.
correct.
Absolutely not. So I think that still would be there, but the techniques and like what you said, contextual, all the more
So
yeah,
yeah, so my sense is that mobile native tech companies, so essentially marketing tech companies
yeah.
which have mobile native solutions,
Hmm,
right?
hmm, hmm.
They are going to do really well. And coming back to fintech, I think only those companies which have business models which are scalable but not at the cost of profitability, which are scalable from. So for example, Grow, there is a company called Grow. I'm not I mean, Grow and Zerodha are two fintechs in India
Yeah, zero the and grow, yeah.
which have democratized playing the market. So classic example, when we were small, when at least I remember my dad used to talk with some uncles, वो stock में डाल दिया, ये stock में डाल दिया, मेरे को मतलब even when I came to college, I had no clue, how the stock market works and
Hmm,
क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए.
hmm.
That is the problem statement Grow and Zerodha solved for. So they said that we will democratize, stock market options for Bharat. We will give it to a Bhushan Sawant or a Mandar Wairkar, and we'll say that, boss, you are now, it's your call where to invest into. We will give you certain cues of how the market is
Of
doing, what
course.
are the trends, what is going up, what is going down.
Yeah,
Uske basis pe, you attach a demat account
yeah,
and start trading. And you can do intraday trading, but typically intraday trading is something that people like you and I can't do because it
yeah.
requires a lot of
A lot of
follow up and
yes,
of the market and all
correct.
of that, right? Which is one of the reasons why I don't predominantly do a lot of stock trading. I'm not very sure about you, but
No,
I stick to the traditional formats. Uh,
तेरे घर
and
पे finance minister है.
Correct.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I think the biggest sham, I wouldn't call it a sham or a scam, man, but see all these bitcoins and all these cryptocurrencies, the kind of bullishness that they had in 2020,
One,
2020, 21, 20,
yes,
correct, right? These 2 years, 2020 and 2021. I think it also was because of the pandemic. People. I mean, that's my sense, right? Again, this is my opinion. Of course, there are other undercurrents as well because blockchain was a big thing and cryptocurrency was riding on the
but now
back
blockchains.
of
I mean,
blockchain.
still like recently I read about Google like partnership. Who did they partner? The Google had a partnership with what was that blockchain?
Unbase,
Coinbase and Google, crypto
Coinbase.
cloud partnership. So
Okay.
I don't know if you read about it. I mean,
I did read about it somewhere, but honestly, to me, crypto has always been a very gray area, right?
correct.
See, understand, like while I do, I don't follow crypto that closely, to be
Hmm,
honest.
hmm.
That's also because not a single central bank on this planet, uh, you know, recognizes or accepts crypto as legal tender or currency. By the way, you know that, right? So it's a high stake game. It's essentially like it's like poker, right? You might go home rich or you might go home naked.
Hmm.
There are only two ways, how poker ends. So the way I look at it is very similar to that. But again, to be honest, not a subject matter on crypto.
Yeah.
So
That's why I
wouldn't
mean
want
I
to
think
sort of
that's a separate conversation altogether.
Correct,
you
because
know.
it's a it's a overlap
Like some
between.
people really swear by it.
Correct.
um like they can argue about a lot of things, like how certain countries have already started accepting as,
Legal
yes,
tender.
like a legal tender. But I think we'll leave that to a separate conversation, maybe once you make that new avatar of
Of
crypto.
crypto.
Yes,
Yeah, in
then
fact,
we will get into that. Hmm.
funny, just as a sign off on this crypto
Yeah,
piece,
yeah,
even Elon Musk came out with this Dogecoin, right?
yeah, Dogecoin, yeah.
And then he said that, hey, look, man, if you've collected enough Dogecoins and their value totals up to XYZ, तो तू टेस्ला खरीद सकता है. He
Correct,
made that open, right? He said that
correct,
Dogecoin का अगर वैल्यू टेस्ला जितना हो गया तो जा खरीद, 5
correct,
Dogecoin में टेस्ला खरीद के आ. No
correct.
problem. So again, see, like I said, not a subject matter on this particular topic, but
Mm-hmm.
there are, of course, relevant use cases to crypto. I'm
Yeah,
not sort of rubbishing it altogether,
yeah,
but for the most part of it, it's essentially, if you see, it's been a failure globally. Uh, so yeah, I think that's perhaps my take on crypto as of now.
ठीक है.
Yes, yes.
भूषण सावंत सर, आज का अवतार, I haven't seen the Avatar 2, but this Avatar, what I saw, blew my mind. I haven't had a serious conversation as like this about fintech or anything finance with you for the longest time we've known each other. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this in-depth analysis of fintech industry, and I hope people who are interested will kind of, even if you're not interested, you should listen to this. By the way, this gives a sense of how this industry works and what is going to happen in the future. So, Bhushan Sawant, this is a very formal. Actually, why formal? ऐसे ही है. Bhushan Sawant, thank you so much for
Arey,
coming
it's
to
my
Deep Talk
pleasure.
Story.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure, Mandar Wairkar. And like I said, once again, thank you for getting me, rather inviting me for this particular piece.
He talks a lot, you know.